Hey guys, welcome back. Just a reminder, tickets are on sale for our conference next May 22nd through the 25th in Grafton, Illinois, and Brooks Agnew is one of the speakers. He'll be getting into some amazing information just like we will be tonight, and I'm excited about that. But tickets are available at journeytotruthcon.com. That link is below. It's going to be a lot of fun. Come hang out with us. Live stream tickets are also available. Those are only $99 this year. So if you can't make it, take advantage of that option. Hopewell Farm CBD. Guys, if you're looking to try a new CBD, that stuff is amazing. It's incredible, especially if you have any type of chronic pain, especially like my back pain. It's helped tremendously. And even if you have trouble sleeping, you know what CBD does, but their product is very clean, very clean. It's full spectrum, and I highly recommend it. You get 15% off all of their products with promo code JTT Thanks, and that goes to the end of December. I believe it ends on Christmas. So take advantage of that while you can. And as always, 20% off all of our Teespring merchandise with promo code 20 and back. That being said, welcome to the show, Brooks. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, sir. Good to be here. I'm looking forward to the event in May.
Yeah, so are we.
Same.
So are we. And guys, if you don't know who Brooks is a scientist, physicist, author, I mean, among many other things, a wealth of information. Just a library of knowledge, and we can go a million directions with this conversation, but there's so much to get into right now. You've been at this for quite some time, and we thank you for everything you're doing. But what I'd really like to get into is a story you told when you were 9 years old. You had some missing time, and that was kind of the catalyst for everything that happened since then in your life. So if we can start there and go from there.
Well, that's quite a story. I went camping with my parents in the Sierra Nevadas in the summer of my, I guess it was my 10th year. And we were up around, I guess, 7,500 feet, something like that. I think we were the only people in the campground. And woke up on Saturday morning, and I woke up before everyone else. My grandfather was in another tent, and my mom was in my tent, and I didn't want to lay around, and no one wanted to get up yet. So I said, well, I'm going to walk up to the creek and do a little bit of fishing. And they said, yeah, whatever. So I grabbed my tackle box and my fishing pole, and I walked. It was maybe 1,000 feet, maybe 1,200 feet from our campsite up to where this creek was that ran through the campsite. So I laid down my tackle box and put a little lure on my fishing rod and cast it, I don't know, maybe a dozen times or something. But you know how 9-year-olds are, they just get bored pretty quickly, I guess. It was just casting practice, no fish.
Right.
And, kind of laid around, skipped some rocks, enjoyed the scenery as much as you can when you're 9, and then picked up my pole and my tackle box and walked back to the campsite. And as I was walking back to the campsite, I noticed that there was that mint green, Jeep pickup truck parked at the campsite, and standing outside of it was a ranger who was talking to my mother, and she had her arms folded in that way. Moms always fold their arms like they're mad. And I come walking up, and they turn and face me as I'm walking up, and they go, wow, where have you been? I said, what do you mean, where have I been? I told you I was just going to walk up there and do a little bit of fishing. I didn't catch anything, so now I'm hungry. And they said, well, you've been gone all day. And it was like, close to dusk, not just after dawn. So that I didn't have that kind of passage of time at all. So anyway, we went through that argument. I didn't get a beating. We ate and went back to bed, and I thought everything was normal. But when school started about 2 weeks later, everything was different, because everything came to me very, very quickly. And, you remember, well, you probably don't know, but in the old days, we had this thing called the SRA readers. And they were green and yellow and blue and red colored short books. And you could read them and answer questions at the end of them. And what it did, it sort of graded you on how good of a reader you were, what your reading comprehension was. And I don't know, maybe there were 100 of these things in this set that sits in the classroom. Well, I read them all. I just sat down and read them all. And then through the year, we had questions from each one of those stories, and I knew all the answers. And I got in trouble for blurting out all the math answers instead of showing my work. And it was such a problem, in fact, that my parents pulled me out of school and sent me to military school for 3 years.
Wow.
So
For being too smart.
I was
Well,
climbing out of my skin. I just knew everything. And it's been that way ever since.
and you think that's related to that incident in the woods where you had, I guess you would say, missing time? Do you have
Yeah, I
any
would say
idea?
before that, I was just an ordinary average kid. And after that, like my brother was 9 years older than I am. So I'm 9, he's 18. So he's starting college. So he comes home from school, and of course, my mother was like, "Will you do something with your brother?" So he just laid out a big piece of paper and gave me a pencil, and he wrote up in the top corner, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon. And then he gave me bonding rules for each one of those, like this one has 2, this one has 1, etc. He said, "Now connect all these together and fill up this piece of paper." So he thought he was giving me busy work, and he came back a short time later, and that entire page was covered from edge to edge all the way with those 4 atoms connected together by those rules in one big molecule.
Hmm.
And I remember him walking in the room going, "Holy crap, Brooks, what did you just do? What is this?" I said, "I don't know. I just connected these things together the way you told me to connect them, and then this is the result." And after that, I found myself at Long Beach State College speaking to college classes. I don't remember everything about it, but it was like being in a fishbowl for about 2 years. It was just crazy.
Mm-hmm. And so
Wow.
whenever you had that missing time, I mentioned in a past interview that you think you weren't taken like by ETs or something, but you think more you slipped into a time bubble, or what do you think actually happened, or do you know?
I've gone back to that moment because people have made a thing about it. And I've talked to people who can just say they can do regression hypnosis and all of this. I've never actually sat down and gone through it because I'm a little paranoid about turning my self-will over to someone else, even temporarily.
Right.
So I never actually did that. But I for some reason, when I go back there, I just get this feeling that some introduction was made. I don't know if I was taken off planet or put on a ship or whatever, but a tremendous amount of information downloaded into me that day, and it woke me up because there were other capabilities that came with it. Like a short time later, I'm standing on the front porch. My mother's there smoking a cigarette, and it's just an ordinary day. And all of a sudden, I said, "You know what? I think the power plant's going to explode." And about 15 seconds later,
Wow.
I have the newspaper article. Where the boiler exploded. My mother cried, and it wasn't because the boiler exploded, it's because I saw the boiler before it exploded. Now, my grandmother was a gifted clairvoyant, very, but my mother was clairvoyant as a brick, and she hated that. So when it showed up in me, I think it scared her, and it sort of put a divide between me and the rest of the family because I had these flashes of the future.
Wow. I remember you saying that when you were in 8th grade, the newspaper came to interview you because of your math scores, and they asked you something about what you want to do when you get older. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, so I'm at high school in California. I can't remember the name of the high school, but it was off of Heil Avenue. Or I'm sorry, junior high. I'm getting ready to go into high school, 8th grade. And the newspaper comes to me because I'm one of the top math students in the state of California. And so it was kind of a notoriety, I guess. And my math teacher is the one that set up the interview. So the reporterette comes and she's asking all the ordinary questions. And then she says, "So what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I didn't even hesitate. I remember saying, "Well, I want to be an asteroid miner." And she did not know what to make of that. I don't even remember the questions after that, but it was like we hadn't even set foot on the moon yet. Okay, this is 1968. We weren't there yet. So it was so foreign to anything that anyone in this country would have ever thought of, and it was just so ordinary to me. Like we've already been there. We've already harvested minerals on asteroids and brought them back to Earth. We hadn't, but that was the future that I saw.
Right. Well, I thought you described it as remembering Like that from the past, it wasn't the future, or did I misunderstand that?
Well, yeah, it's like remembering the future, seeing something in the future and then bringing the memory back to the past. And I think that's kind of what happened to me in my youth, which made me really not fit in. And in fact, when I wrote the book, Remembering the Future, I took that part out of the book. I took that whole story out of the book. And then before I published it, right before I said it, the editor said, look, why don't you put it back in? We really like that story. And I said, well, look, I'm a professional engineer. If I put that stuff in the book and it gets out there and people, start razzing me about it. And finally, I just said, you know what? I think there are people out there that need to hear this. I don't think I'm alone here on this planet. I think there are other people who don't feel comfortable totally living here on this world. They feel foreign to it. So I put it in the book. And it became a bestseller, mostly, I think, because of that story. But at least I was able to share my ideas about technology with people.
Right. I mean, obviously the information is fantastic and we all love it, but people love a good story also. And that's just the nature of it. That's just the nature of it. And that's actually a good way to trick people into learning something. If you can include those, make it enticing, they're learning at the same time, which that. So I want to fast forward now. I remember you talking about an experience you had in Trout Lake, Washington at Mount Adams that kind of blew you wide open. And you say you were 52 years old and that's when your life actually started. And this is really fascinating to me.
This is, life is kind of a series of waking up and going to sleep and waking up and going to sleep, because we get caught up in the third dimension. We get caught up in the I have to earn money and I have to fill my garage with toys, and there's really no room for all this metaphysical crap. So you sort of wake up and then you fall back into the trick of mortality. So I get called by James Gilliland, who runs this facility in Trout Lake, Washington.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he boasts that there are all kinds of UFOs that fly over his place, which I can attest there. It's pretty active.
We've been there multiple times.
Right. Yeah, it's a great place. He calls it the sanctuary. So I thought, well, okay, this is a sanctuary, for people to come where they don't get bothered by the outside world. And but then I realized, or maybe it was the sanctuary for ETs, but then I realized it was a sanctuary for us, that we could go there and we could be ourselves and not have to worry about being criticized. So it's Saturday night. I'm alone in my no, I'm not alone. I'm with three other people in my sort of room area. I stayed in a cot in the computer room, and we're meditating. And the window's open, everything, and we're looking at Mount Adams in the moonlight. And we all close our eyes and we're meditating away. And I feel like this kind of padding, like a pulsing against my heart area. And I begin to hear music in the background. So I think to myself, well, there's 300 and something people here. Somebody's playing music in the house. That sounds really cool. But as the moments went on, the singing began to become more clear. And it was like a choir. It was like a choir with thousands of voices in it. And as I listened closely, I could hear the bass, and I could hear the baritone and alto, and I could hear all the different voices. And then I realized that they were singing words. Like sometimes you listen to opera and you go, gee, that really nice, sounds nice. It's Latin or something. But then you begin to listen to the words. Well, that's what it was like. And the words that they were singing were these long, extended words, but it was peace, love, and joy over and over and over again. And I thought, that is just really, really cool. But I realized that no matter where I turned my head, as I had my eyes closed, the sound was the same. So it wasn't coming from outside my body. It was coming from inside my body. It was coming from this heart area. So then the music sort of went quiet and faded out. And I felt like I had this conduit, or this umbilical tube connected from me to Mount Adams. It went out the window and across the countryside and hooked to the mountain. And that's where I guess that this pulsing was coming from. And then this voice came, and it was a male voice, but it was very soft. And it said, because you are quick to forgive, you are forgiven. And this hose disconnected, like an air hose disconnecting from my chest. And it kind of threw me back a little bit, which knocked me out of the meditation, which knocked everyone in the room out of the meditation. And I said, wow, did you guys see that? Did you hear that? And they were like wide-eyed, like, did you see that? I said, what? And they said, well, while you were there, you were like shaking back and forth, not like a convulsion, but sort of, waving back and forth. And there were all these gold plates and gold tablets and drawings and schematics and everything going into your back in the dark, and we could all see them. And so I felt really weird after that, because that was kind of crazy. So the next morning I go downstairs and I look for Angelica Whitecliffe. She was there, and she's this very understanding person. And I kind of thought maybe she would understand what I went through. So I went up and asked her, and I described the situation to her. She said, oh, Brooks, don't worry about that. That's called a download. And I said, well, what was it? She said, well, over time, what'll happen is those things that downloaded into you are going to come up, and they're going to be made manifest to you, and you're going to understand what they're for.
That's wild.
Wow.
I've had experiences out there, nothing that profound. I mean, they've been pretty profound, but so this changed your life, obviously. I remember you saying, like, even your physical body started changing after that, as far as like, didn't you wear glasses and you just ditched the glasses? What happened next?
I had asthma since I was like 4.5 years old. So I used an inhaler, and like a nebulizer. And I wore glasses from the time I was like 13, because I was nearsighted. And at that moment, I weighed 252 pounds. Within a month, I didn't wear glasses anymore. I didn't have asthma anymore. Haven't had an attack since then. And I dropped 40 pounds. And I wasn't doing anything. It just fell off like it didn't belong there. And everything changed. I began writing like crazy. And from 2012 to 2020, I wrote 8 more books, and 7 of them have been bestsellers.
And
Wow.
what year were you at ESETI?
The first time I was there was 2006. So that was August of 2006.
Yeah. Wow. So that's pretty powerful.
That was life-changing. And of course, waking up then at that age, well into my career, I didn't have a need to go back to sleep, and I didn't. I just stayed awake from then until now. And I think I've lived more life. I know I've lived way more life since I was 52 than the previous 52 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's a perfect example. I mean, hearing that story alone is a reason for people not to give up. I mean, it's never too late. It's never too late.
Exactly. Yeah. People think, oh, I'm 40. I've already messed everything all up. No, not at all. You can step out of that life and into a new one. All you have to do is make the decision.
Right. And that segues into something else I want to talk about, is manifesting and consciousness, and how that actually applies to the real world.
Well, I let me go back just a little bit to kind of the beginning of the consciousness argument, because you hear a lot of people talk about it. You hear word salad all the time. And I don't blame them. It's the knowledge set that they have, and it's as far as they can go with what they're feeling. But in physics, we start out with a primer, and that primer is that there are 4 forces in the universe. There's electromagnetism, there's gravity, and then the strong and weak molecular charges. That kind of holds the third dimension together. And the reason we've wrestled with that, I mean, it was easy to come to the conclusion, but the reason we wrestled with it is because it applies one way for the macro, that is to say planets and galaxies and superclusters and things like that, and another way for the quantum, for atoms and for electrons and for frequencies and things like that, the wave functions. And so we've been struggling trying to find this theory of everything, a sort of a key that will work in both worlds, the quantum world and the macro world. And we have not been able to do that. What has happened is that some of my colleagues, Amit Goswami and Kip Thorne and other, I wouldn't say radical thinkers, but forward thinkers in the science, we've realized that something is missing in these 4. We realize that there's a causation that needs to be there. Now, Einstein called it God, and that's fine. And other scientists have commented about that. I read a biography of 8 mathematicians. You'd think it'd be really boring, but it wasn't. They all talked about receiving pure knowledge in dreams that opened mathematics up for them. So the science itself has now accepted that consciousness is now the 5th force in the universe. And we've moved them around over time, and now we almost universally agree that consciousness is the primary force in the universe, and everything else is after it. So this is a big epiphany for me and my colleagues, because it's not something that you can put on a scale or you can shoot a pyrometer at and measure consciousness, but we know it's there because we know it's not. We can tell when it's there, we can tell when it's not. So the idea about sentient consciousness, not consciousness of rocks or trees or nature or planets, but actual humans, is that we are the only beings that we know of on this planet that can perceive time. If you don't believe me, try to teach your dog about tomorrow. It's just not going to work.
That's a great point.
That is a good point.
And because we can perceive time, our observation has an effect on time, not just its elapse, but also what happens in the past and in the future. We can reflect on things. We can observe things from any point, from the past, from the future. We can be in the present and go both directions. We can, instead of walking down the road with looking through life through a drinking straw like most people do, punctuating their lives with paychecks or family vacations or, God forbid, wait until they retire. You open the drinking straw up and you can now see 180 degrees at one time. And now you've got a bigger perspective on what I call the average reality, which is the mathematical sum of the activity of all the sentient beings in the universe. That's the average reality. And we're somewhere in that cloud of reality, either as a tail condition or right there in the middle with everybody else. I mean, if we go to a baseball game and we actually go to the game instead of watching it on TV, and we walk out on the upper decks and you look down and you say, wow, that field is really green. It's true. It is. We all agree that it is. But in reality, the green you see and the green I see are slightly different. Yeah. Because the electrical impulses that are made by the rods and cones in your eyes are different than in my eyes. But we agree that it's green. So we have an average reality that it's not brown, it's green. And that is how we go forward in life. And we accept all of that. But the truth is that either consciously or unconsciously, we manipulate that all the time. 2 people can be doing the same thing at the same time. They could be dancing together. And one is lost in bliss, totally in love, and the other one is looking at his watch. They're doing the same thing in the same place at the same time, but they have different perspectives,
right?
Different realities altogether.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is the case randomly, why can't it be the case on purpose?
Right. Well, and that's what, unfortunately, that's what the dark ones know. They put that, they constantly repeat a lie or put out what they assume to be true until it becomes a reality, because
but why does it do that? Why does the truth that they put out on all the channels that hits us and we put our consciousness on it, which by the way is real energy, why is it that their reality becomes manifest and ours doesn't?
I don't know. I mean,
it's because of resonance.
Resonance.
It's resonance, right? And you can do resonance, several different ways. You could do it with very loud noise, or you could do it with a very quiet noise applied at the right time over and over again. And you create resonance and it begins to build on itself. If you look at throughout history, not the last 25 years, but before that, all the real trends, all the real changes in the world started with 1 or 2 people. It didn't start with a big crowd. It didn't start with a 1 million person protest. It started with 1 or 2 people, and then that changed the world. They're trying, and by the way, this is counterclockwise energy. This is in the Fibonacci. We're talking about a creative, regenerative energy. The other energy is clockwise, and it's male dominated, and it's destructive energy, but it requires tremendous noise to make it go. And that's what they use, what I call the global media empire, to do. They shout it from every single electronic device that they can reach. And that's how they make their reality manifest.
Right.
Yeah, and and it's our job to remember that we have that ability also.
Yeah, it's gonna start at your event in May.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
You might as well be there, participate in it.
So, you were
Yep.
talking about going back and forth, being able to go into the past, into the future, and all that stuff with consciousness, right? Well, what is that? What are your thoughts on time travel? Like, everybody listening to this channel has already accepted the fact that it's possible and most likely being done already. I know I don't understand the physics behind it. I'm sure you have a better idea of how that works. And the fact that you assume that you maybe slipped into a time bubble at age 9 tells me that you obviously have looked into this.
Yeah, I have. Can I share my screen just for a second?
Yeah, let me make sure that you can.
Let me see here. If I hit this, you should be able to see that frustum, right? You can see that?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so for a long time, I had this in the book. I thought time was like a segment, and we could perceive sort of before and after this segment. And this is the formula for a frustum. And my editor said, if you put this math formula in the book, it's going to cut sales in half. But because nobody's into differential equations like I am, so they really don't get this. So I thought, how do I explain what time is really like, what it means to move through time? And what came to me was that time is not a mathematical formula like this. It's more like an observation. So it looks more, and I created this 3D image so that I could put it on the screen and explain it to people. Time is like this, like a 3D funnel, except we're not at the point of it. We're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of this funnel. And behind us is the past. And the past is not a straight line. It's kind of an effervescent tube. And inside of it are all the things that we have passed through up to this moment in this time construct. The reason it's not a line is because we can go back and we can reobserve the past, and we can change how we're affected by it. We can resolve things. We can clear things, pain and mistakes. And if we missed questions on a test, we can go back and get those questions right again. And then now in our minds, we've aced the test. So life changes as we alter or reflect on this past. In the immediate future, you notice it doesn't expand out to infinity. It's kind of truncated. And the reason is because of all the choices we've made up to this moment. We didn't go to school. We got married too young. We decided not to move, or we did move. But the choices that we made in the past affect where we are right now and what we can do with our lives for the next, say, 6 months to a year. But after that, it's the potential of all potentialities. And if we can manifest a dream, either something we want, like a truck or a motorcycle or a house, or something we want to be, or something we want to do, like I want to go to Egypt, I want to visit the pyramids. We don't think about the money, we just think about that image. And the clearer we can make it, the easier it is for the universe to manifest that for us. And all we have to do is follow that path and resonate with it, and that future will occur. And I teach people this, and it's kind of strange the way it occurs with people, but I tell people, let's see if I can stop sharing my screen now.
I don't know if I can end share.
Oh, there we go. I got it.
Okay.
The button was over on my third display.
Oh,
So I was talking to a barista one time, and I was at a conference, and I was experimenting, I guess. And I said, so what's your dream? He said, well, I want to buy a truck. I said, oh, I see. So is it a black truck? He said, no, it's white. Ah, okay. Well, is it automatic? Nope. 4-wheel drive. It's a stick shift. It's lifted. And we got all these details out. And after I said, well, how much does it cost? He said, well, I don't know. I said, well, we need to have all the details we can get about this truck, but here's what's going to happen, Mr. Priest. When we come down off this mountain and you go back home, you're going to see that truck everywhere. You're going to see it at the mall. You're going to see it on the freeway. You're going to see it at a car lot. That truck is going to appear before you. And that's how manifestation works.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. And it's like almost like a vision board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a book a long time ago called The Secret. Yeah. And Rhonda Byrne did a great job writing it. She did it in kind of story form. It went nowhere, actually. She got an investor that printed up like 100,000 copies, and they gave them away to real estate agents. And these real estate agents liked the book so much that they sent it to Oprah. So Oprah, after getting about 6 or 8 copies of this book, like, oh, you've got to read this book, she finally said, okay, I'll interview the author. And that is what made Rhonda Byrne famous, was the interview on Oprah. So I got it. I read the book, and she was on to something. You look at a picture in some fashion magazine or some travel magazine, and you cut it out and you stick it on your fridge with some magnets, and you look at it every time you go to get a glass of ice water or a ham sandwich. But millions and millions of people did this, and nothing happened because they were missing the key component, and that was the resonation. You can't just keep looking at the future. You have to look around you in the past to see what's vibrating with that energy that you just put out there in the future. And those are the things locally that you could put your energy into, and the vibrations go right back to the future and build that thing for you.
Right. It's like the bell effect, and you ring the bell, and what it's affecting around it is
right. And you can't just keep hold on to the bell and she's wailing it with a hammer.
Right. Right. What's reacting to the bell is basically your next step.
Right. Now think about that in terms of what the media does. They know this information, so that they put out fear of this and that and this and that, and then you believe it starts showing up more and more and more because everyone starts.
There's an old saying, that which we once abhor, we soon tolerate, then embrace.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't come at you with the end game, because it would be so repulsive to us that we would have an allergic reaction to it. So you're right. They give us the little tones here and there. This is okay, and therefore this is okay, and therefore this is okay. And before long, you're embracing the dark side.
Right. So going back to completing my thought about consciousness, though, I've heard you describe that, the universe, it all started with one consciousness. You've described source itself as a consciousness. Mm-hmm. And the way you described it is that we are all source, right? You said we aren't separate from the source, but we're participants of it.
Well, we think of source as the single almighty intelligence. And my friends and I call this the big snooze, when the universe just all collapses back down to nothingness, to a singularity again. And source had this I am moment. It became self-aware, but it was alone. It was solitary. And it decided to divide itself into two. And for a long time, I wrestled, and I've got this in my lab notebooks behind me. How did that division occur? I mean, what physically actually happens to source? Is it like a cell, that divides, like chromosomes split? And I decided it's got to be the same mathematical principle that we've been applying for the last 20 minutes. It's got to be that square root. Because you're talking about not a flat condition. You're talking about some spherical existence. So it took the square root of itself. So now there were two equal versions of source. And one or both of them began to continue that process until there were trillions and trillions of sources. But, if you take the square root of anything, I don't care how big it is, it doesn't take very many iterations before you approach one, right? Because the square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 2 is 1 point something, right? And then the square root of that's 1 point something. You approach one, but you don't actually ever get to one. However, what happens is these soul mates are created in pairs, but they're very, very close to being identical, except that they begin to have mortal existences. And as they have mortal existences, they begin to grow in stature. They get more experience. They have pain, they have babies, they have success, they have failures, and they gain knowledge, iteration after iteration after iteration, hundreds of lives, thousands of lives, millions of lives. And in the scriptures that says, be therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect. Well, I don't know about you, but I feel like I've been handed the big end of the bat and told to go to the plate and hit a home run. I don't know how to be perfect. It's been confusing to me ever since I heard that statement in Sunday school when I was a kid. The truth is that statement is confusing because it's translated wrong. The word's not perfect in the scriptures. It's complete. Be therefore complete, even as your Father in heaven is complete. Be therefore like the original source. And how do you do that? You do that through experience. You do that through mortalities over and over and over again until you grow back to the point where now you are source, all of it. And the process is we are participating in this creation. And that's been the process for billions and billions and billions of years.
Right. And that's exactly why some people call religions traps, because it puts God outside of you. It puts source outside of you and not within you. And it puts a cap on what you're capable of.
I have this series of books called the Birth Trilogy. It's 3 books. People call it the birth journey. But it talks about this process of returning, of this end times science fiction story that talks about Earth itself coming together as a spirit Earth and a temporal Earth into the Earth we live on right now. It's actually a living being with which we have a symbiotic relationship right now. And over time, what's happened is the consciousness of man becomes more wicked. Earth has an allergic reaction to it, and it rises up with an earthquake or a hurricane or a tidal wave, and wipes out mankind down to a few tribes again, and they start over again. Well, now there's 8 billion of us on this planet, and about half of us are wicked and half of us are good. And the planet cannot decide what to do with us, whether to destroy us or whether to release its bounty to us. So the planet itself is now beginning to split. It's beginning to divide again into a higher vibrational Earth and a lower vibrational Earth. And the race of man is dividing with it. And we're becoming less and less aware of one another. And over time, what will happen, and I don't know how long this will be, one world will have all higher vibrational beings on it, and the other one will all be third dimensional beings, and we will not perceive each other anymore.
That's what Dolores Cannon talked about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Know her well, or knew her well.
Nice.
And we can actually see evidence of that when we look around.
Yeah.
I mean, the world, it's splitting right before our eyes.
It definitely feels that way. That's for sure.
But there's also like a spiritual alignment occurring at the same time. I feel like this unifying energy or this consciousness, it's like bringing, I guess, some of us together. I guess it's bringing each group together in its own way. I don't know. How would you describe that?
Well, it says in Matthew that the end times won't come, or I won't return until first there comes a falling away. Well, that term falling away can also mean graduation. Like most of the people that I know that were raised in a church, whatever it was, somewhere in their doctrine, they were taught that this is the true church and all those other churches out there, they're bad and we hate them. And it's been the source of wars for, I don't know, since as long as history has been written. It's a brilliant plan. If it was Satan that came up with it, I'm going to create all these religions and I'm going to make everybody think that they're worshiping God when actually they're hating all other religions. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful confusion. But what's happening now in the United States anyway, because we survey this all the time, the biggest church, the biggest religion in this country are the nuns. Mm-hmm. None of the above.
I was gonna say, wait, that's a religion? Yeah.
Because they graduated, whether they're Baptist or whether they're Seventh-day Adventist or whether they're Mormon or whatever, they're graduating by the millions. They don't need religion anymore because they're directly connected to source.
Right.
Yes.
And that's the
amen to that.
And that's the ultimate goal for
Right.
for all of us. And the realization that a lot of us need to come to.
Well, it's interesting that the indigenous people that were here kind of felt that way. They didn't have a central religion that bound them all together. They all just believed in a great spirit. But when we came here, when we established our towns, we established what's known as a township. And a township, technically, economically, was 640 acres. You place a church in the middle, and then you build the support community around it, and then out to the farms. That was a township. So you can make the argument from the original compact of people that came in wooden ships and landed in Plymouth Rock to way on up into early 1800s that it was religion that brought us together into communities. You can make that argument. So maybe religion was necessary in that point because it created a commune, a kind of community of people that had a like belief. But as they began expanding and stepping on one another's territory, that blended away. And in a couple hundred years, you find where we are now.
Right. I actually agree with that. It makes a lot of sense to implement religions in a primitive civilization for that exact reason, because otherwise they'll end up killing themselves. I mean, if you give them a higher power, give them something to believe in, it would force them to want to do better and unite. And whenever they don't quite have that understanding themselves to just naturally do that.
But then it can become a double-edged sword where you have like things like the Crusades where they start going around killing other people in the name of their religion and their God. Either convert or we kill you, like these holy wars essentially. And then another religion that's created wants to kill this religion because theirs is right and you need to convert to mine. And then so it can do both, but it all comes down to the consciousness of the people is really. And then I feel like once your consciousness, you like outgrow it once you get to a certain level where you're like, okay,
once your consciousness gets to a certain point and you realize, hey, wait a minute, I could push this thing around.
Right.
I don't need to have that person that I go to make that connection for me. I can make it myself.
And I don't need to be saved by an outside God because God is everything. It's within me.
Yeah, the whole
that's what Jesus actually taught when you actually do your research. He did not teach he was your savior and to worship him. He taught the exact opposite, actually. He said, you are just like me. And he's tried to say, the kingdom of heaven is within you. That's what he said. He said, don't you know your gods?
Think about it. In the big picture, Jesus didn't come here to support the church at all.
No,
Everybody
opposite.
Reads the book, gets that.
But
he didn't come here to teach us of his divinity. We already knew that.
Mm-hmm.
He came here to teach us of our divinity.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it was necessary. Even though it turned out the way that it did.
Yeah, they killed him because he was a threat to the church, to the system. It's actually the opposite.
Yeah, that counterclockwise energy conflicts with the clockwise energy.
Right.
But you could see what happened when it's left to itself. The counterclockwise energy does grow. People do get healed. People do get saved, so to speak. They have this mighty change of heart where the fruits of that change of heart are love and charity and long suffering and patience. And, those are the fruits of the spirit. But the other way, it is, how much can I put in my barn? How much can I hoard? We were talking about billionaires the other night over scotches and cigars. And we were asking the question, why do billionaires even exist? I mean, I know why they exist, because they accumulate money to the point where it becomes self-regenerating. But What happens to a billionaire when they get to that point where they literally cannot stay awake enough hours to spend all the money?
Right.
They become miserable.
It's like a
I don't know
parasite.
any happy billionaires unless they're really all about, tearing down what has been built around them. They're all miserable. They're all hateful. They're all evil. I don't know why that is, but it is. And yet everybody covets that. They want to be that billionaire. They know, hey, when I get my billion, I'll be different than that guy.
Well,
No,
because the system that allows you to become a billionaire is built on evil. So when you fully submerge yourself into that system, inherently you become that. You become unhappy and you're in that energy. So there's no way around it.
And a lot of people sell their soul to become that in the first place, or to become a huge celebrity in the first place. You have to almost sell your soul to the evil.
So what is a soul worth?
Right.
Right.
What is a soul worth? Well, it's worth what someone's willing to pay for it. So if you look at what Lucifer or Satan is willing to pay for a soul, you begin to realize how important we are. I saw this question asked, and it just so impressed me. I'll share it with you. The guy says, if I'm going to give you $1 million right now, no questions asked, what would you do with it? And immediately the guy says, man, I got plans for that $1 million. Absolutely, I'll take it. Well, there's one condition. The one condition is at the end of the next day, you die. Oh, well, wait a minute now. I don't know if I could accept. No, I'm not going to accept that. Wait a minute. You're willing to trade $1 million for one day of your life? Yeah, I am. Then why don't you act like it? Why don't you act like $1 million is the value of the next day and spend it that way?
Yeah.
Powerful.
That's powerful. That is.
It is. Well, that goes back to just living in the moment, being present.
And none of us is guaranteed the next day as well. So,
right.
Yeah, I think you got time. You don't know that,
I got killed on my motorcycle in May of 2012. And the cop who revived me was taking my helmet off, and he was asking me my name and all that kind of stuff. And I said, wow, that was so easy. It was. I wasn't gone for very long, but dying was painless. I had two overwhelming feelings. One was regret. I didn't get to do all the things I wanted to do, and I didn't get to tell everybody that I wanted to. I love them. And the other one was, I'm really in bad shape here. Is that bone sticking out down there? So but there was no pain at all. It was just like the most peaceful transition you can imagine. I lost my fear of death, but I renewed my zeal for life.
And that's the end goal. I mean, understanding there's a reason they want us afraid of death, because if we're afraid to die, then they can control us and they can make us wear a mask or make us, stick stuff
anything,
inject stuff into our body.
We'll do anything because we're afraid.
So, I mean, that's the ultimate. It's ironic that you had to die to understand there's nothing to be scared of.
Yeah. There's nothing to be afraid of. We are eternal beings and we're just having a mortal experience.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. I want to go back a little bit where we were just talking about selling your soul and what that actually looks like, because people can do this without even realizing that they do it. But their own ego or greed will sell their soul for them. And that's just as far as all you're doing is agreeing to something. Like if you want fame, right? If you want fame, popularity, knowledge, whatever it is that you want, that comes with a sacrifice. You have to give up something to get that. And just by signing that record deal or agreeing to do whatever it is, in a sense, you're selling your soul. It doesn't look like you're selling your soul because you're not signing a paper that says I'm selling my soul.
Well, I think within limits, we can be anything we want to be, and we can do anything we want to do, except, we can't just jump up in the air and fly like Superman, because that's a violation of the laws of physics. But pretty much it's true. But what some people do, because do think that dark forces have power, dark entities have power. They do answer prayers, and they do give blessings. If you sell your soul to Satan and say, I want a golden voice, I want to be able to sing perfectly clearly in 4 octaves, and I want to become, a world famous singer. Fine, no problem. You give me your soul, I'll give you the voice. I wouldn't except that I actually heard a singer tell me this, that she had sold her soul to Satan to have her voice. And it is a phenomenal voice. But that's scary, because sooner than she thinks, this life's going to be over, and that debt is going to be paid.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, it comes with, sometimes it comes with misery. You might get the one thing that you're asking for, but it comes with all the stuff that you weren't asking for.
You remember the movie Bedazzled?
I don't think I've ever seen it.
It was crazy. There was a female devil, and she would grant wishes. And Brandon Fraser was wanted this girl, and he kept trying to anticipate what she wanted. So he would go to the she-devil and say, well, I want to be the greatest basketball player that ever lived. So she would give him that blessing, but then she shorted him in other areas. So it was just like that. Yes, I'll give you your blessing, but I'm going to take something from someplace else.
That's funny.
Right. It's a trick, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that's how the dark works. It's they have to get you to agree on something. It's they have to still operate within the laws of free will. So they trick you into giving up your free will to them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of what I see the media does and the system does, is they try to get you scared or get you in a state where you will agree then to what they want to do in the first place. Because like you said, if you do it outright, people will reject it. So they got to trick you into doing it on asking for it, essentially. So,
right. And I agree with the misery part, because I think of news actors. They say, oh, I want to make a lot of money, and I want to be famous, and I want to be on TV every day. And so they say, well, fine, we'll make you a news actor, but you have to read the words we give you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect
you have
example.
to read the script. You cannot do actual journalism. You are a puppet.
But you get the fame and notoriety that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what are your thoughts on what do we see taking place right now on the planet? On the surface, it looks like a lot of doom and gloom, but if it's really all just doom and gloom, then why are we even here in the first place? Because we're all here on a mission. We all have a purpose. I'm just curious to know what your thoughts on that are.
Well, the doom and gloom we hear because of what I call the global media empire. They play that record every single day, that this war is this way, and this disease is that way, and your sexuality is this way. And they play that album over and over, and they're very organized about it. Let's call it the Rebel Alliance, the people who know enough truth to know that's not true. For instance, what's going on in Ukraine isn't actually a war between Russia and Ukraine. It's a war between the global syndicate and the middle class of the world. Those sanctions, they don't hurt Russia. They hurt us. They hurt the middle class of America. They hurt the middle class of Europe. They're killing them.
Right.
Killing them. And this is a proxy war using Ukraine against us, not against Russia.
It's the cabal versus humanity in reality.
Yeah, exactly. We're seeing our tax dollars pour into a rat hole in Ukraine, and then magically they come out other holes into people's pockets and buy elections. And we're watching it in real time, and there's nothing we feel we can do about it. We vote our guts out, and nothing changes.
And they rigged the elections anyway. They
the election system actually is rigged. Where
exactly.
People, you don't even have to run a campaign.
Right. Joe Biden.
It's sort of like, we're going to run a marathon. All these candidates are going to line up. Ready? Boom. They shoot the gun. Well, one of the candidates just steps onto the shuttle bus.
Yeah.
And just drives to the winner's circle. And he gets out of the bus. He goes, saw the winner, and he gets the trophy.
That's
Oh,
great analogy. Perfect
Yeah.
That's
analogy.
the best way to describe
How
it.
dare you try to overthrow an election?
Joe Biden got 81 million votes. Oh, it's amazing.
And on a small scale, Katie Hobbs won the election. What?
Yeah.
How did that-
Right. And we're supposed to just buy that. And then you're an election denier if you even question that this could be cheated.
That's better.
You're an election denier. So we create this derogatory term to try to, one, dismiss the people that are seeing the fraud or seeing how things aren't adding up, and two, scare people that would think about questioning it, and to not like, oh, I don't want to be called a conspiracy theorist or election
They don't
denier.
want to be labeled. Yeah.
So it's all these psychological games.
See, I didn't explain that to you. You already know it because you're part of the Rebel Alliance. You have this consciousness that's telling you, wait a minute, that's not actually happening. Everyone else around you believes it, which you think they're crazy because, wait a minute, you're looking up in the sky and you're telling me it's dark, but I can see the sun for myself. It's actually light out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's how plain it is to us.
Right.
Pee on you and telling you it's raining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that you call us the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah, I like that
because it's true. We really are. I mean, we're all here on this mission, right? We all have a purpose. It looks like it's doom and gloom, but it's not, because ultimately, like you said earlier, we're splitting. The planet's splitting in two.
Yeah.
The planet's splitting in two.
And you can't call it a revolution, because a revolution means, that there's a leader, and we don't have one. We don't have a leader. This is decentralized. This is a resistance. And I think of like revolutions that happen. They start, but they never finish the way they're supposed to. It's sort of like the lion makes the kill, but it's the hyenas that eat the carcass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What we have to do is remember, we don't have a leader. What we have is a central idea. We have a central hope. And you already know it, and no one told you. You just see it because you're in this frequency range. And I think there are a lot of people like that. I think there are billions of people like that. Look at Brazil. Look at China. Look at France. Look at these places that are saying, wait, no. And by the way, here are my words. And they hold up a white piece of paper. Because they know they can be put in jail if they put words on it. So they put nothing on it, and we still get it.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's true. You said before, like, everything we do affects the universe, so do everything with purpose. And I think that's something crucial that we all need to think about and apply every day, because we're only going to create that if we have purpose to what we're doing. Like just doing this show in itself right now is creating that ripple effect that's going to ultimately affect the universe. And I'm bringing it up to put the reminder out there, because even like myself, sometimes we struggle. Like, what am I doing? Like, am I just going through the emotions, but what are we actually doing here? And I think those little reminders are great for people listening that might be going through the same thing.
Yes. Whether we are aware that our consciousness is having an effect or not, we are. And our consciousness actually affects the equation of this average reality. Individually, we do, just like voters, except we're now an energy presence. So I have said, if I can affect the universe accidentally, just by waking up today and being a force at my factory, why can't I do it on purpose? Why can't I align my energy with something I consciously want to happen? And I find out when I go to conferences, and I think that's kind of why they locked the whole country down, because we were ready for the roaring 20s. Mm-hmm. We were so ready for it. 2019 was the year of awakening, but 2020 was going to be the year of action. And they locked us all down. I did one conference on the 7th of January, and I was booked the whole year. Didn't speak at another conference for 2 years.
Jeez.
We lost the momentum because we could no longer see one another face to face. We couldn't shake hands. We couldn't embrace. We couldn't have dinner together and sing together. They broke our resonance. Mm-hmm. But we're back.
Yeah, we are.
And
absolutely.
And they're still trying to keep us.
Still trying
to keep us from traveling That you
Yeah.
can't, other countries can't come here because of certain mandates.
But
And
it backfired on him because how many people started waking up since 2020, since the seed?
Lots.
right.
Lots.
Well,
Lots.
I say this like I sound like a broken record saying this, but they shoot themselves in the foot every step of the way. Anything
Yep.
they try to do to hold us down just has an opposite effect, and it makes us stronger, and they're not going to keep us down no matter what happens.
Yeah, it is. They do it though. I mean, I still see, as crazy as it sounds, I saw one today driving her car alone, wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
I still see people today doing it.
Mhm.
Me too.
Well,
Yeah.
you can always tell. I don't watch the news, but you can always tell when more fear is being pumped because you see a rise in the people wearing masks.
Yeah.
You see more people wearing masks. I'm like, okay, I know
I'm
that.
seeing it right now, actually.
Yeah, I know the
I'm starting to see
media
it.
is saying
Yeah.
something right now, but it's interesting because I just read an article that Denmark actually has gotten rid of the term COVID and it's now back to the flu. They're not recognizing COVID as this pandemic virus anymore, and it's just back to the normal flu. And this year, even in the States, the flu is back. We have
And no one talks about how Sweden didn't do any of this stuff
Yeah.
and had among the least deaths and the least
Mhm.
cases. So
And
they
what
can't
breaks
explain
my
that.
heart- What breaks my heart is 128 million adult Americans have been jabbed,
Right.
and now they're dying.
And they're
every
all the ones
single
dying.
day. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And
it's really sad.
Gosh, you watch the videos of these deaths and it's creepy, just weirds you out. How they just look around like something's there to gather them up, and then they just fall to the ground like a sack of hammers.
Right.
Well, that brings me to the point of the split and people making a decision right now. And ultimately, depending on where you were at in 2019 really mattered, because what came next in 2020 was the deciding factor for which direction a lot of people were going to go. And the people that signed up for this made their choice. They made their choice when they signed up to get that put in their
But it
body.
wasn't really a fair choice. It wasn't an informed choice.
Exactly. That's true. Not a lot. It was forced upon people, and not everybody wanted to do it. Some people did it against their will. I'm not saying that as a blanket statement, but it's just one way to look at it.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see this, how the genetics now has changed in the body. And instead of getting rid of these metals like chromium and aluminum, and that we gather them up all the time in the foods we eat, but our body sheds the metals off. After you get the reverse transcription error written into your DNA, you now gather those metals up and they deposit in your arteries and veins, and they create these kind of resilient rubbery clots that are insoluble. And eventually it will kill you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And not to mention that, I don't know if it's true or not, but the nanotechnology that's in there, which actually brings me to the topic of AI and what's taking place there with this whole transhumanism thing. It's scary, but it's not, because I always say, like, what's AI trying to do? It's trying to become human, which tells you that we have all the power.
Yeah, some of it is. There's artificial intelligence in a lot of things, and I don't think they're all alike. But if you look at beings like Sophia, they're experts at answering questions and semantical games, because they can outthink a human being. That is to say, they can calculate all the possibilities and pick the best one in a flash, where we go by intuition and feeling. But the difference between AI and us is that we have desire. We have desire, and we have an urge, and we love, and we have feelings that certain people, when we get close to them, there's a layer of cells underneath our skin called glial cells. And these glial cells respond to certain frequencies, and we put off these frequencies. When certain beings get close to one another, these glial cells begin to resonate with one another. Something about it. And they bond. They just bond because they have this great feeling when they touch one another. AI doesn't have that. And believe it or not, I can walk away from the USB cord Really? I can. I was born in the middle of the last century before we had cell phones. I can just set it down on the table and walk away. I exist. It does not.
Right.
Great point. Yeah, great point. It does not have a soul. Yeah, it needs us. It actually needs us. That's a great point. And I think I could walk away from it too. I'm ready to walk away from it.
I can't walk away from a Harley, though. I can't do that.
Right. Well,
The internal combustion engine is here to stay.
right. So you're planning inner Earth expedition, or at least to go explore where the entrance might be at the poles. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I'm kind of an explorer, and I think it was go back to like 2006, 2007. Well, actually, before that, we were writing the Arc of Millions of Years series, and somebody handed me the book called Our Hollow Earth, and I read it. I thought it was amusing, and I set it on the shelf, and I forgot about it. Just didn't mean anything to me. But then my friends at JPL went out in space, turned around, took a picture of Earth, and they noticed auroras over both poles at the same time. That is not what they expected to see, because our concept was that the auroras are caused by the solar wind, striking the Earth. And the Earth, because it's tilted, only one pole is kind of facing the Earth at any given time, winter or summer, and that's when these auroras occur. Well, they hurried and they put together a space program called the Themis program. And this was 5 satellites placed in a nose cone. They launched them, and their specific mission was to discover the source of the auroras. And I thought, how strange that they would rush a space program, spend all that money to discover the source of the auroras. Don't we already know? And then they published their erroneous paper after they took the measurements and said, the auroras are caused by cosmic bullets that occur in our upper atmosphere. And when the blast comes down and hits our upper atmosphere, that's where the auroras come from.
What's a cosmic bullet?
Yeah, I said, what the hell is a cosmic bullet? They didn't explain anything. So I thought, guys, you just piqued my curiosity. So I started looking into more things. I started looking into geological, oceanographic, atmospheric, electromagnetic. All this evidence started coming together and started to point toward the idea that we do not live on a molten ball floating through space, and we live on tectonic plates like cornflakes in a bowl of milk. The planet is made differently. And then the measurements started coming in. Carnegie Science did measurements that backed up the measurements that Japan had made by measuring the frequency of our core. We don't have a molten core. It's a solid core made of iron. Well, a lot of times we've said, no, that can't be, because the frequencies are all off. And they are. But the reason they're off is because the iron is matrixed with xenon in a big crystal. And that makes sense, because when we do partial pressure measurements of our ocean and our atmosphere, the xenon is missing. 90-something% of the xenon is gone from our atmosphere. We don't know where it is. Now we do. It's locked in the core, matrixed with the iron. So now we're discovering things about our planet that support the idea that planets may form as hollow spheres. So I had the hypothesis, if that's true, then that means, and the evidence shows that there's another ocean on the inside of our crust, crashing waves on a shore inside of our crust.
Yeah, that's been proven. That's been proven scientifically, right?
Well, actually, what happened was Washington University, Dr. Y. Sessions, got his grad students, who were working for Dale Pizza, by the way. They went through 600,000 seismograms, and they took all the information and put it in a computer and modeled it, and you can see the vibration of the water crashing on the shore inside the planet. And these
inside the planet
listening stations.
And they did this beneath the Atlantic, right?
Yes, there's an Arctic Ocean, a sea, the Arctic Ocean underneath the crust of the Atlantic Ocean. So if that's the case, if there are 2 bodies of water that are separated by the crust, then they have to have 2 different life ecologies. One's exposed to the sun and the other's exposed to this inner core. So we theorized that that opening between those oceans has to be somewhere above the Arctic Circle. And in 2008, the Arctic cap opened up for the first time in maybe 20,000 years. And the following summer, they netted 1,500 new species of rays in Malaysia. They do this quite often, and they never see 1,500. These were fully developed different species of rays, like manta rays and stingrays, and fish that we haven't seen in millions of years, like frilled sharks and dorsal squids. And we never seen that stuff. We got fossils of it, but we have never seen a living one. And yet there they were. So we said, there's got to be an opening through the crust, and the two oceans are blending through this opening. So let's go and see. Let's get a ship and let's go and see if we can find this opening. And the only ship that's capable of doing it is a Russian nuclear-powered icebreaker that sails out of Murmansk, which is north of St. Petersburg. But right now, you can't even buy Russian dressing. There ain't no way we're going to rent a Russian nuclear-powered icebreaker and do this expedition. But we are planning on doing it. As soon as everything settles down, those ships are there. They're willing to contract with us. It's expensive, but we think we can make a good return on the investment and go and see if we can find this opening.
That sounds amazing. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And that's what I love about you, because we talk about all the woo stuff on this channel and everything, all these, fantastical concepts and, this amazing stuff. But you're like, you bring the science to it. You bring the science to it. And you're,
I realize there's an esoteric part to it, that there may be some cosmic portal or whatever, but guys, I need verifiable, repeatable, measurable data. So that's what we're going after.
Right.
Yeah. And there's lots of stories, like there's Admiral Byrd's supposed testimony. There's the Smoky God supposed testimony. There's other
Edidorfa. Don't forget Edidorfa, which by the way, we followed up. We went to Mammoth Cave. We took every tour. Then I sat down with the tour operators. They've been there their whole lives. And I asked them, be honest with me. What's the deepest part of the cave? You've been in every nook and cranny of this cave system. 360 feet. Nobody walked into the inner earth from Mammoth Cave. And even if you could, it's 900 miles.
Right.
Even if it was a 45-degree angle, it would take you so long. A caravan of people could not carry enough food and water to sustain you for that walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's interesting. We have all these stories, these testimonies, whatever.
Well, then there's Shangri-La and Shambhala and all the ancient so-called mythologies.
We went to Tibet, went on the upper plateau, and we spent a week looking for that. And we interviewed all kinds of way out of the way temples up in Shagatsit, 14,000 feet. Nobody has the answer there.
Right. Well, it's been described by certain people like you'll never find the physical entrances because they're not there. You have to be at the right like vibration to be invited in by these beings.
Yeah.
And like the people, Billy Woodard said that the reason you can't find the holes at the poles is because there's a holographic overlay. It looks like clouds. Even if you went there, you wouldn't see it. You have to be invited in. There's UFOs monitoring the poles at all times. And, there's that type of information. You can consider it or not. It doesn't prove anything, but it would also make sense that these things.
There's Telos, which Lowell Johnson has his own story. He claims he was
been to Shasta a bunch of times too. I've chased every one of these stories physically myself. Went there, shot my own film, did my own digging. I have my own facts.
Right.
Repeatable and reliable.
Right.
Yeah, and that's important too.
But it's
So I think it's.
But here's my argument. It's like if you go out to try and find a Sasquatch with a gun, you're not going to find a Sasquatch because they know your intention. It's the same with you might know exactly where that entrance is, but your motive is to prove that it exists and to show the world. But somebody else who goes there who just wants to have an experience that doesn't care what anyone else thinks, they might get invited in because of their intention. If they know your intention is for reasons other than, actually having the experience, you might not be invited, maybe.
If you think about it, it makes sense that they don't want it proven beyond a shadow of doubt to the whole world. Because then what's going to happen? The militaries and the the very low vibrational systems, and people are going to try to start, oh, we gotta invade it, we gotta go down there, and that's the last thing they want. If you think about it, it makes sense. They don't want that,
Right. Right. Exactly.
We've established a channel on a satellite that has access to that area of the planet. So we're going to stream from the ship directly to the satellite and beam down to 2 receiving stations, one in Europe, one in the US. And those receiving stations will let everybody see what we see.
So you're actually going to live stream from the expedition, or attempt to.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. We're going to stream 4 channels, and it's pay-per-view. So it's like $20, and you can stay with us for the entire 15 days, 24 hours a day. And you can just flip between the channels so you can see what's going on in different parts of the ship. Because we felt exactly the way you do, that if somebody tries to stop us or block us or prevent us from sharing the information, we want the world to see that happen. And likewise, we're going to be the only consciousness signal for 400 miles in any direction. These are the most treacherous oceans on the planet. They can only be done by these ships. So if there is intelligent life, let's say there are UFOs that park inside the planet or on the bottom of the ocean, because we're talking about 4,000 meter deep ocean here.
Right.
If they come up to see us, we get it on film. You see what we see.
That's great.
That's amazing.
Now, how long have you been planning this?
Well, I actually joined the expedition in 2006. At that time, Stephen was handling the expedition. He died in October of 2007 of rapid onset brain cancer. So I thought, well, that's the end of the expedition. So the board called me a couple months later and said, look, you're a big project manager. Why don't you take over the expedition? So I said, well, okay, let me see the books and see what you got put together. And they had sold seats on this boat for about $25,000 a piece. Not a lot of them, but enough. And I said, look, the issue is, I think if we take a boat full of rich tourists up there, that's not going to be a mission I want to be involved with. So let's return all that money and let's do this as a true scientific expedition. And let's see if we can reach our 40 million fans that we have built up over the years. See if we can reach them and get them to fund the expedition, because it's going to be about $5.5 million to pull this off. $3.5 million to rent the boat, and then you got to have post-production work, satellite work to get all this information out there. And we're bringing 125 scientists from 8 universities around the world, plus film crews and experts. 125 is not a big crew, let me tell you. You fill it up in a hurry. And I have so many people, I have thousands and thousands of people that have written me and want to be on this journey. Some are even willing to pay to go. But that's not the core of what we're trying to accomplish. We may only get to do this once. Mm-hmm. And we want to, and it's sort of like going on a camping trip and forgetting something. There's no going back and getting that. Once that boat takes off, that's it. Everything you have with you is all you have. So you got to take it all, and you got to be ready to measure everything.
Mm-hmm. How long of a trip are you expecting it to be?
It's 15 days. So we're leaving from Murmansk, and we're going to Helsinki, which is actually north, for 1 day. And then we leave the following day, and we head towards San Josef Islands. And then after that, we have a chart. We know where we want to go. And then we have a 5-day option. And the 5-day option is, if we're out there, and it's now the point of no return, and we need to start heading back to port, and we see something, we can exercise the option and stay as much as 5 more days.
Right. So 15 days total are okay.
Plus 5 days. So we could stay 20, but then we got to get out of there because it's going to start freezing up, and we don't want to get stuck in the ice. Mm-hmm. And we are in an icebreaker, but we're talking about, we're exploring 10,000 square miles in 15 days. So we're making 8, 12, 15 knots the entire time we're at sea. And we're taking technology with us. We're taking what we call drop darts, which we developed, which are sample darts we throw over the side. They're 8 or 7 something feet long. and they go down to the bottom and they sink a pipe into the bottom and take a core sample. And then they inflate a nitrogen bag, come loose, and float back to the surface. The transit takes about 2 hours to get down there and all the way back up because it's deep. And then we recover it, bring it to the boat, take the core sample, put it in the freezer, and drop it again. We think if we're close to this opening, we should be able to find fossils that are from that inner ocean on the bottom around this opening. And then we have one more piece of technology, which sort of looks like a sled, but it's right now only crafted to go to 1,500 meters. That's as deep as it can go. It's going to take $5 million to upgrade this to go to 4,000 meters. But it has an articulating arm on it, a light, and a camera. Of course, it's cabled. So 4,000 meters of cable. Wow. So you can't make any headway when you're doing this because it'll just pull it right up off the bottom. It'll strain that cable and it'll just snap it. So you got to sort of go very slow, like 1 knots. So you can take some pictures. Is it worth the $5 million to do? I don't know. We're still thinking about that. But we can take the samples. The darts cost about $1,200 a piece to make, and they cost about $80 per trip to go down and back.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, that's a lot of money just for a few pictures if it works. And how much does that much? How much does that much cable weigh?
Oh, I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, the ship can carry because it's got a helipad, but yeah, it's a lot, and it has to be put together as you drop.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. Wow. I'm excited. So, do you have an estimated time when you think this is going to happen, or when you would like it to happen?
We go from, we have the 6-week window in the summer that's like mid July until the end of August, and then you have to get out because it's going to be winter before you know it up there. It freezes at the rate of something like 1,500 square miles a day. It freezes, so you have to really hustle to get out of there. In fact, this ship has actually rescued other icebreakers that got trapped because the ice formed so fast they couldn't get out. In fact, my ancestor, Sir James Ross, discovered the North Magnetic Pole in 1831, and he lost his ship the first time. The ice crushed it. They had to dump out on the ice, winter right there, and in the spring, another ship came up and rescued them, and the next year they got another ship, and they went up and found the North Magnetic Pole.
Wow. But, I mean, this year, next year, obviously not this year, but...
Yeah, well, the plan is you have to have your deposit in by October of the previous year. The deposit is about $1.75 million. That just reserves the boat. Then you got to pay another $1.75 million by May. So you have 5 months to raise that money. Then you leave in July. And of course, there's a lot of logistics and planning to go between those times. We still have to get all the scientists from their universities with their gear to Moscow, and that's a big plan too. So it is at least a year. I would say if we were going to plan a date and this disagreement we have going in Ukraine were over today, we would not be able to go till 2025.
Right. So it's still quite a ways out, but it's quite an undertaking, and I understand there's a lot of planning. So, I mean, more power.
We've spent close to $85,000 so far, and that's all come out of my pocket. But I'm happy to do it. It's pure science, and the data is blows my mind every day. It's not like I'm gaining data that says, "Oh, well, that's it, and we're not doing that expedition." No, it actually inspires us. We have Washington University, we have Cambridge, we have Stanford, we have one university in Australia. They don't want me to say their name on the air. We have Scripps in San Diego, with lots of universities that have crews or have staff that they want to send with us to do their experiments and gather the data. Of course, we're going to get it all on film.
All right, that's great.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been incredible. We covered quite a lot. Can you please let people know how they can find you, how they can listen to your podcast?
Yes, easy to do. The best way is to go to brooksagnew.com. That's easy to do. You can find it in Google if you forget my name, but brooksagnew.com, links to everything. My books are on Amazon, and my books are kind of unique from other people's books that if you buy a book off Amazon, either the Kindle or the paperback version, I will give you the audio version for free.
Cool.
So if you're not a great reader, don't worry about it. I read it for you.
Is it audio?
Awesome.
Is the audio version your book? Your voice?
Yeah, it's my voice. I couldn't afford a professional. So
That's better though.
I like that better.
Me too. Yeah. I mean, because you get to read it with your own emotion as it was meant to be. So,
right.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah.
We look forward to officially meeting you at the conference. We're looking forward to your presentation.
that's going to be awesome.
Yeah,
it is. I can't wait.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. It's going to be fun, guys. If you haven't decided yet, tickets are still available. Obviously, it's quite a ways out, not till the end of May, so you have plenty of time.
And my newsletter is free, doesn't cost anything, and the link to that conference is in my newsletter. So we're sending it out to my database twice a week.
Great.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. We appreciate that. It's going to be fun. So come hang out with us if you want to, guys. Thank you so much, Brooks. Thank you guys for joining us. And until next time, have a great evening.
All right. Bye-bye.